Now we are going to try to write the equation of a line when we are given the slope and just a point. So if we remember back to what we learned in the last video, we have y equals mx plus b is the equation for our line. So we're going to plug in what we know. We have y equals m is -2, so -2 times x plus our y-intercept. But since we're not given our y-intercept, we're just going to leave it as b because we don't know what it is. And we want to figure out what b is so that we can actually write the equation. But we have been given a point here, and this point has an x value and a y value. And so we can take this 1 and this 3 and plug it into this equation and solve for this missing b. Anywhere that there's an x, we'll replace it with 1. Anywhere that there's a y, we'll replace it with 3. So we'll have 3 equals -2 times 1 plus b. And then we can use our equation solving skills to get b by itself, just like in the last videos we were trying to get x by itself, but this time we're trying to solve for b. So we'll multiply this piece out. -2 times 1 is just -2. So we have 3 equals -2 plus b, and we want this b to be by itself, so we'll try to move this 2 to the other side. Opposite of -2 is +2, so we'll add 2 to both sides, and this becomes 0. Cross that out, and now b is all by itself, and we're left over here with 5 equals b. That tells us that my y-intercept is 5. So now I have enough information that I can write my equation. So my equation will be y equals -2x plus 5.
We want to find the equation that goes through 3, -4 and has a slope of -2/3. So we're going to start off by writing our generic form of the equation line, and we're going to plug in what we know. So they give us m, our slope is -2/3. We are not given a y-intercept. We're given a different point on the line. So we'll just leave that as plus b. However, we do know that a point is our x-coordinate and our y-coordinate. So I can substitute or plug in -4 in for y and 3 in for x, and that allows me to solve for my y-intercept. So let's do that and swap out y with -4. Instead of x, we're going to multiply that by 3 plus b. So we're going to rewrite this as -4 equals -2/3 times 3. 3 is the same as 3 over 1, so this is a giant one. So I'm left with -2 plus b. And then our last step is to undo -2 by adding 2 on both sides. So now we have b equals -4 plus 2 is -2. All right, so now that I have my b component, I can rewrite my equation. Y equals -2/3 x minus 2, and that is the equation of line that has a slope of -2/3, and it goes through the point 3, -4.
All right, so now we're going to practice with another example. Okay, we're given the slope of this line is 4, and we want it to go through the point -3, -2. So we're going to start by filling in the equation with what we know. So y equals m is our slope, 4x plus, this is not our y-intercept since we don't know our y-intercept, plus b. Okay, and then we'll replace our y and our x with our x and our y from the point that we've been given. So we'll have -2 equals 4 times -3 plus b, and then we can simplify from here. And -3 times a 4 gives me a -12, so we'll have -2 equals -12 plus b. And now I can take this -12 and I can add 12 to it. -12 plus 12 is 0. Whatever I do to this side, I got to do to the other side. So add 12 on this side. -2 plus 12 is going to give me a +10, and I'm left with just b on this side. So now that I know my y-intercept, I can then fill in this equation here with the whole thing. Y equals 4x, because 4 is my slope, plus 10, because that is my y-intercept that I just found.
On derivatives, sometimes you'll be given a point and you'll be asked, is this a point on the line? Is this a solution or is this a point on the line? So one way you can check is to take your point that you're given, substitute them in for x and y. So instead of y, I'm going to swap it out for 10. I'm going to say 10 equals -1/2 times my x value, which in this case is -5, plus 5. And I'm wondering, are these equal? If I plug in -5 in for x, will I get out 10 with this equation that we have? So I'm checking to see if these are equal. We got 10 equals -1/2 times -5 is +5/2. 5, 10, does that equal 5 over 2 is the same as 2.5, so we got 2.5 plus 5, and then we got 10. Does that equal 7.5? The answer is no, it doesn't. So I would say that this point is not on the line, because when I plug in -5 in for x, I got out 7.5 and not 10. So I know that -5, 10 is not on my line when I graph it. All right, let's try it one more time. Again, if we're given a point, we're testing to see if it's on the line. We got x here and y, so we're going to swap out our variables. So instead of y, I'm going to swap it out for 1. Does that equal -1/2? Instead of x, I'm swapping it out for 8 plus 5. 1 equals 8 times -1/2 is -4 plus 5. 1 and then -4 plus 5 is indeed 1. So I know that 8, 1 is a point on the line. If I were to extend this graph out here, I know that at 8, it would hit at 1. All right, what if we're given 2 points and I want to find the equation of the line that goes through 7, 0, and 3, -2? So remember, to write our equation of the line, we need both the m and the b component, or our slope and our y-intercept. So let's talk about finding the slope first, given 2 points. If I want to find the slope, remember our slope is the same as our change in y over our change in x. So you could graph this if you want to and go over 7, up 0, and then go over 3 and down 2. Okay, I could graph these points and then try to find the slope triangle that makes these points. Remember, my change in y is the same as the difference in my y values. So I can just look at my y values here, 0 and -2, and figure out how far apart are they. Well, they are 2 apart from each other, right? Or I could look at my x values and ask myself, what is my change in my x values? So I'm going from 3 to 7, and so that is a difference of 4. So if I'm writing my equation over here, I know my slope is my change in y over my change in x, which is the same as 2 over 4. Sometimes you don't want to graph it though. That might be kind of a lot. And so since I'm only really looking at my change in my y values anyways, and my change in my x values, I can actually just eliminate the graph and just do it straight from the points here. And we'll show you how. This is my x coordinate for my first point, and this is the y coordinate for my first point. This is the x coordinate for my second point, and this is the y coordinate of my second point. So I can find the change in my y values, or the difference between my y values. So I can take my first point and do 0 minus -2, and then my change in x is equal to the difference in my x values, which is 7 minus 3. It's very key here that since I started with the first point and I subtracted the y value from the second point, that the same happens with my x values. I start with my first x coordinate and I subtract the x coordinate of my second one. So the direction matters. So since I did 0 minus -2, I have to do 7 minus 3. I can't do 3 minus 7. My difference here is positive 2 on top, and 7 minus 3 is 4. What if I did it the other way though? What if I want my arrows to go the other way? What if I subtract from the second one instead? Change in y over change in x equals my change in y. Maybe I start with -2, so -2 minus 0 all over, and change in x is 3 minus 7. That would equal -2 over -4, which is the same as 2 over 4. So you can see here that I could go from my first point minus my second point, or my second point minus my first point, just as long as I keep the order match, and I will end up with the same slope either way. Now that we have our slope, let's find our y-intercept. Just like we did when we were writing the equation just given 1 point, I can use one of these as a tester point. So let's write what we have so far for our equation. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals, I know m is my slope, which is 2/4, or I can simplify that down to 1/2. So 1/2 x plus b. I do not know my b yet, right? Because neither of these are my y-intercepts. So I'm going to pick a point to test. Either of these points should be on the line, so I can pick either one to use. So I'll use 7, 0 for now. And I'm just going to swap out my y for my y here, which is 0 equals 1/2. Instead of x, I'm going to swap it out for 7 plus b. Now we're going to simplify. So 7 times 1/2 is the same as 7 over 1 times 1/2. So 7 times 1 is 7, and then 2 times 1 is 2 plus b, and then I can subtract 7/2 over. B is equal to -7/2. Let's try it out with the other point. Let's do 3, -2. What if I decide to do that one instead? Y equals 1/2 x plus b, and I'm swapping this out for 3, -2 instead. So -2 swapping out for that plus my b value. So we got -2 equals 3/2 plus b. Subtract 3/2, subtract 3/2, -2 minus 3/2 equals b, and then you can change -2 into a denominator over 2. So if I want to multiply, I can multiply the top and bottom by 2 in order to get this into a common denominator. The -2 times 2 is -4 over 2. So that's the same thing. So I'm going to swap this out for -4 over 2. -4 minus 3 is -7/2, which is what we got as well. So either way, you don't have to do it twice. I'm just showing you that you can pick either point. So usually just pick the easier point, but you can pick either point and you should end up with the same b value. Now that we have our slope and our y-intercept, now we can write our equation that goes through those 2 points. Our final equation would be y equals our m, or our slope is 1/2 x, and then we know our b value is -7 over 2. Awesome.